Next is the good of the cause, where members of the public are invited to express themselves on matters of concern to the school district. To allow fair and orderly opportunity to speak, individual comments are limited to 5 minutes, and folks ought to remember that this is a televised meeting. You should bring your student and staff issues to the appropriate administrator first. Anyone wish to address the board this evening? Please come to the podium and please state your name and address for the record.
Anthony McSweeney, 16 Brook Hill Road. The topic is busing for St. Joseph and Bishop R. More specifically, St. Joseph for us, but we understand it's the same bus route. Some of you here I've spoken to. I know Bernardo, I've spoken to. Kurt, I know you've been in correspondence with Dave Zarnowski and Dr. Valesky. I know several people probably have left some messages with your office. You probably know the situation, so it's kind of twofold, I think. The purpose here is one is to get an update, maybe share information if anyone's not on the same page of what's going on with the busing, and also some contingency planning we need to do as parents for our son. In the event busing isn't available, we have to quickly get him registered back into East Brunswick High School, preferably in honors classes, because he's in those classes at St. Joseph, and other things as well. But more importantly, I think the first thing is maybe an update on the busing situation. I know information has been shared. We do know bids have gone out. No bids came in. And, so I'm kind of a bit of a neophyte in terms of the politics that go, not the politics, procedures that come into play when you bid for busing. And maybe if you could just give an uneducated person maybe some information on how the bidding process works.
Hold on 1 second. I just want, what is the issue, big picture? What is this issue, or what is it generally?
Well, the big issue is number of drivers, low enrollment in the non-public schools, and the cost per student,
right,
which we are controlled by the state. So Bernie, want to give the details?
What is the question that Mr. McSweeney has?
Well, so some background. The issue is that we have several non-public schools where transportation at this point in time cannot be provided because the cost of transportation exceeds the state statutory maximum. So there have been several bids already that have been unsuccessful. I've communicated with Mr. Sweeney a couple of times already on this issue. There were letters that were sent out to parents advising them of the transportation issue, but at this point in time, there's no transportation available.
Bids to get us below that state number.
Correct.
And we have, okay, I see.
That's correct. The state number is $884 per pupil.
Mm-hmm.
So if a bid comes in and the amount per pupil is at or below that amount, then we can provide transportation.
I understand.
But once it exceeds that amount, we are forbidden from providing.
Our hands are tied.
Absolutely.
Mr. Jacoby,
That's correct.
okay.
So Bernardo, when we spoke, we came up with a number of students of about 32 when you and I were on the phone. It was not definitely not a definite number or definitive number, but it was
a number of students because the three school. Well, we have four schools where there's an impact. St. Joe's, Bishop R, and St. John's, as well as Rabbi Pesach.
Okay, that's
So there are four schools that at this point in time have no transportation services, and all parents were notified as of August 1.
And is that number 32 about right?
For the three, it's about 32 in total. And I think at Rabbi Pesach, I believe it's about 20 students.
Now, the route for St. Joseph, that's 32. I mean, they might be
No,
different directions,
it's
or
not.
they're all
No, 32 was, I believe, in total.
in total?
For all three schools. St. Joe's may have been about 12 or 15 students.
Okay.
And again, this is just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the data.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So that would be about $28,000 plus at the maximum level of $884. I'm just rounding, but it's about $28,000 for a successful bid to come in within that price target. Now, I'm not surprised because I think busing's about $50,000. It's an estimate. I don't know where that number came up, but for private busing for the route that I'm familiar with, this comes from, I think, the dean or the lead administrator at St. Joseph was be about $50,000 or $3,000 to $3,500 per family. So I didn't break down the math. I could do it quickly to see how many students that actually comes out to be. So there's a gap between the 28,000 and the 50. It's a pretty big gap. School starts in 15 days for our son, August 30th. So we have to have a plan B. I guess my first concern is we do, from my conversation with you, Bernardo, we do have a bid going out with South River, but that still includes the 32 students?
It's the same package. I believe it was for St. Joe's. You're interested in the St. Joe's component.
Yeah, but it would be Bishop R, because they're right next to it. It would
But
be the
each one
same
of
route.
those are their individual routes, as I understand it, because they're all going to different destinations. So as I had explained previously, and I think the board may have gotten an update on this, there were several bids that had already been done by the Educational Services Commission. They've gone out multiple times. They received, the last opportunity for bids was just a few days ago. And we were waiting on those results to be able to issue our own bid. We did not want to go out to bid at the same time because
Right.
then we'd all be in competition with each
Sure.
other. So as of today, I have not gotten word on what the result was of the Educational Services Commission bid.
So just so I'm clear in understanding, so St. Joseph is a separate route than Bishop R, even though they're probably, I could drive a golf ball, I'm exaggerating obviously, between the two schools.
I can't tell you the specifics on that because they're not my bid specs.
Okay.
They're
See,
another
and those are
entity's
the
bid specs.
details are probably important. They should probably be one route, however you want to.
Was
Mr.
it done like that last year also? What was the change in the pupil attendance that changed this whole thing?
There are two things that are impacting this, and I can't tell you what the change in pupils are. I can tell you that it's reduced. So you have two pieces that impact. One is, as we've experienced this year, we've had a very high cost of transportation for contracted services because there is a driver shortage out there. The requirements for a bus driver, a school bus driver, are more difficult now in New Jersey because federal requirements have now come into play that had not previously been enforced in New Jersey. So that's caused an issue in terms of the availability of bus drivers. The second piece, so let's take that and the fact that that drives the cost up, and the other piece being a reduction in enrollment and qualified students to receive transportation. That also has a direct impact on what the per pupil cost is.
And we couldn't supplement one of the routes that we
We are
normally do?
forbidden from supplementing routes. Non-public routes, by law, can be provided as long as the cost per pupil does not exceed $884. If it's $884.10, we can't do it.
But wouldn't we bid one that we already do and then supplement theirs, but we couldn't supplement it all?
I'm not understanding what you're asking.
In other words, one that we would normally do ourselves, that we do because we have the busing for ourselves, we would not give up that route, but let
For
somebody
an
want to take that.
in-district route?
Right.
No. You can't mix and match.
So we don't do any outside transportation at all?
No, what I'm suggesting is that when we are issuing our own routes for East Brunswick Public School students, we issue those for East Brunswick Public Schools. We can't mix in the non-publics. They're completely different.
Okay.
And what's difficult for us, obviously, is logistics, and also, and it's obviously a personal issue more than it is anything else. My son got accepted to two high schools, one other school, Christian Brothers Academy, which is my alma mater. We rejected that bid. even though I served on the board and so on and so forth for several years, because busing, they didn't have busing to go down to Lincroft. If we're going to engage in private busing, I could have accepted knowing this, he would be going to CBA, and I'd be probably spending $5,000 in busing, but, so it's something we want to resolve. We understand all of you have been communicating the best you can, we appreciate that, but my wife and I, we have a short period of time to figure out what we're going to do.
Mr. McSweeney, I need to call time. We're over the 5
Okay.
minutes now.
Then I'm just going to push it one
Let-
15 seconds longer, and to say, if
let me-
there's anything you guys can do.
I'm not sure there is, that's the thing.
So,
That's
so
what I'm
Mr.
hearing,
McSweeney,
yeah.
as I've told you in our
So-
previous conversations, we're doing everything that we can to try to secure busing. Unfortunately, the Board of Education doesn't have the authority to be able to say, well, we're going to provide it at whatever the cost is.
No, what I need is someone to help me get my son back into the East Brunswick school system, get into honor roll classes. That I need some
Okay,
assistance
well,
on.
then I'm going to suggest this, after we're done, you can go ahead, Mrs. Gulick is our curriculum director, she will help you path the course to doing all that.
Okay, because I have with
Excellent.
me his tests and acceptances
Yep,
for honors
thank you,
classes.
Mrs. Gulick, and she'll take good care of you.
Excellent,
Thank you
superb.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else for the good of the cause this evening? Anyone else wish to address the board? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public portion.